Couple weeks ago, I made a video about Toh Weibin's record-setting 850-point tournament game. Weibin played brilliantly, but he also benefited from the awful tile draws of his opponent, Irish expert Rik Kennedy, as many of you noticed. So in this video, we're going to balance things out a bit with a little assist from everybody's favorite Scrabble legend, Nigel Richards. Beating Nigel Richards in Scrabble is difficult, but beating him repeatedly is nearly unheard of. In fact, in his 25-plus year Scrabble career, Nigel has lost 3 consecutive rounds in a tournament to the same opponent only a handful of times. All of these players are either former champions or top experts, including Weibin. But the most recent player to pull off this nearly impossible feat, it's none other than Rik Kennedy. And in these 3 games, Rik showcased exactly the sort of creative and fearless play required to defeat the GOAT. With 3 rounds to go at the prestigious UK Open tournament, Rik is 2 games back. Scrabble pairing systems give as many players as possible a chance to control their own destinies. Rik still has an outside chance to win if he wins his last 3 games, so he faces off with Nigel in round 28. Midway through the game, Nigel has bingoed twice compared to just once for Rik, with his most recent play of the stylish Tina Moo giving him a 69-point lead. Although Rik can claw most of the way back on the scoreboard with Dex for 57, he keeps 4 consonants for next turn and his winning prospects remain bleak. After Nigel's responsive oboe, Rik faces this position. A play like Arvel for 26 is standard here, scoring decently and using up 5 tiles to try and snag the second blank, but Rik spots an even better idea, Vital for 24. While this move scores 2 fewer points and keeps duplicated A's, it sets up a potentially devastating scoring spot using the obscure Avital hook. With only 1 A left in the unseen tiles, the odds are greatly in Rik's favor to use the spot. Nigel is forced to play Pombe, scoring a solid 41 points at the cost of creating another strong scoring spot. He likely would have played Beam if he had had the last A. So Rik patiently plays Wura for 45, by far his top scoring move, once again leaving an A for next turn for a big follow-up. Sensing the danger of that huge hook on this otherwise constricted board, Nigel responds with Disc for 23, denying Rik access to the big spot. This move comes just in time as Rik draws the Z and threatens Plaza there for nearly 80 points. On the other hand, Za for 44 is still an excellent consolation prize for Rik, and with Nigel saddled first with consonants and then with an unplayable Q, Rik cruises to a comfortable win. Although Rik never actually cashed his setup, it was an excellent bit of calculated aggression on his part to make life much more difficult for Nigel, and it paid off. The 2 players get right back into it in round 29, with both Nigel and Rik having bingoed once in their first 4 moves en route to this position. With solid moves available here such as Pion for 38 or Dovish for 26, Rik finds an even better option to put maximum pressure on Nigel. He plays Pin for 23, recognizing that despite the game's early state, he holds the 4th and final S to hook Spin with the other 3 already on the board and one of the 2 blanks used up as well. Even better, most of the letters that hook onto Pin do nothing to prevent the gargantuan S setup either, making it extremely difficult to block. Computer simulation loves this outside-the-box choice by Rik. Clearly unable to address the spot, Nigel plays Ovine for 22, and with the bingo of Oviducts available, Rik elects to play Devo and Opine for 51 points. Had he played Oviducts instead, he'd have to worry about his own setup being used against him, whereas playing Devo with a good leave keeps Rik in control at only a modest hit to his score. And after Nigel dumps vowels with Yiddish, Rik draws CEHO to his CST leave and spots the devastating bingo of Scotched for 114, hitting 2 double word scores and seizing complete command of this game. Later, he adds additional style points by finding his only playable bingo with the second blank, arterial, with 3 overlaps, en route to a 516 to 369 blowout. With the game still hanging in the balance, Rik's creative mid-game sequence completely swung this game in his favor. Finally, in round 30, both Rik and Nigel have bingoed twice in their first 6 moves, with Nigel playing both the first and then second blank in response to Rik's Stellene and Relented. Here, Rik faces a tough choice. He can play Whiz for 52, but instead, he plays Howdy for just 38, reasoning that the Z will often score upwards of 40 points next turn with Zen or Zona, and that Whiz creates a risky S hook without an S in hand. His patience is rewarded when Nigel answers with GIF, opening a triple word score, and Rik hammers it with Azonic for 71. Nigel's next move is Ominous, just Tiz for only 19 points. Rik can play Ori for 27 here, or exchange tiles, but he realizes that Nigel's play creates a sneaky, somewhat hidden hook of Utis. Nigel could have a good bingo leave containing a U, but he could just as easily have a J ready to come down for 60-odd points. Without a single consonant, Rik cleverly plays Awa for only 8 to block the dangerous opening. Sure enough, Nigel does have the J, and he plays it for only 33 points instead. After Rik dumps more vowels, Nigel makes one more attempt to open the board with Roop, setting up the Droop and Troop hooks with both the D and T likely to be on his rack, but Rik safely blocks both with Few and squeaks out a 407 to 390 win in the endgame. While fellow British Grandmaster Ed Martin ended up winning the event, Rik's 3 straight wins over Nigel vaulted him into second place. And when you look at the history of the UK Open, finishing ahead of Nigel Richards is an extremely impressive feat. To me, this is part of what makes Scrabble so amazing. One day, you might give up the highest score in Scrabble history, but the next day, you might put forth a masterclass in how to play fearlessly and creatively against the game's greatest player.